Hello, listeners, and welcome to A Feminine Touch God's Way. Today, Jeshua and myself are going to be talking about heartache and heartbreak and what it looks like in a relationship whenever it doesn't go the way that you hoped that it would. Gratefully and joyfully, we can remember that we have Christ to turn to, but still there is elements of hurt in that. And today, that's what Jeshua and I are hoping to dig into and discuss for our edification and your benefit. All right, let's go.
Hi, and welcome to A Feminine Touch God's Way,
where I, Abby Parrish, and my sister-in-law,
Jeshua Parrish,
discuss God's design for women in the family, the church, the community, the workplace, and so much more.
We are so excited for you to listen in on our stories and experiences as we turn to the Bible and seek God's will for our identity as His daughters,
so that together we can reap the blessings created within the biblical boundaries of womanhood.
Hey, Abby.
Hey, Jay.
I just wanted to start off and let our listeners know that today's episode is going to deviate a little bit from our normal pace. It might not be as polished or structured, but that's because it's heavily based off of my experience and it's my story. I will be sharing about a relationship that wasn't very good, and it's not my most fun memory, but I am sharing it in hopes that it will prevent our listeners from making similar mistakes, that they can be encouraged and to understand why we think it's so important to set in those boundaries and do the legwork up front so that you might not experience heartbreak. So this is just, I'll be talking about and describing this relationship, some of the things I wish I had seen throughout it and how it resulted in heartbreak, and then sharing, how to work through heartbreak once you're in it. So I hope that it is encouraging to our listeners.
I'm really glad we're getting to talk about this today, even though I know it is a topic that normally doesn't have gladness and joy around it. I think that the Lord has allowed you and myself to experience things like heartache or a broken heart that strengthen us and mature us. So I think that this will be a good reminder to you and I of how God has been faithful and good to you and to me. And also hopefully encouraging to the people we get to talk to today. So I kind of wanted to ask you to kind of dive in with us what it has been like for you whenever you have had a broken heart. Like when was the first time you'd say you really experienced that and it was a big deal to you?
So I would say that I've had my heart broken twice. And both of those times were in college. The first time was, I think, 2019. So it was right around the time you and I were becoming friends, because I remember, speaking of one of the ways the Lord has brought us through that and the things that He's done through hardship is He, I think, used the place that I was at recovering. I just needed a friend so badly to lean on, and the Lord just put you right in my path. And so the blessings that's come from that has far exceeded, I think, the misery and pain of that season. So I can be grateful for that. But yeah, so 2019, broken heart. I was looking through my journals, I do journal, which is nice for instances like this because I have a record of just how miserable I was.
You're like, I can dig in and relate and remember.
Yes, I can. And
yeah. And I think that's good too, because actually that's one thing I want to talk about a little bit is maybe we should talk, what would you say is a broken heart? Because I think people say it all of the time. And honestly, it's even a phrase that I'm not a big deal of. I wish there was different verbiage for the idea of being sad that a relationship ends. But how would you define a broken heart? That way we can be working off of a good definition today.
Yeah, I would say it is hard to put it in finite terms because it is such an emotional experience. But I think that a broken heart happens when oftentimes you put your hope in something and you desire something so much so that if it doesn't happen, you are left damaged. You're left just almost like unable to function in a lot of ways.
Okay. And when you say something, you really mean someone, like an individual.
Yeah. In this context,
hopes.
I would say romantic hopes. I don't know. I would say that an argument could be made that your heart's broken if, if you lose your spouse or, there are, I think, contexts for it, which are you can't prevent. But like in this context, I think I could have prevented this experience had I been a little more wise. And had I protected and guarded my heart. Like that's why we've been honing and drilling that concept of guard your heart, put in these boundaries, because if you can prevent a broken heart, by all means you should.
Yeah. I think that's a good point to bring up is this is something that in large part is preventable. I think there's sometimes when it's not, but I think also there's ways to, if not prevent it, to make it less intense and to protect yourself and the other person ahead of time so that a lot of the things we're about to talk about won't even occur to an individual if they're careful on the front end. Like if you do the work ahead of time, then there's less cleanup.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the cleanup afterwards, I was looking at the journal entries, like I was hurt and, just and distraught much longer than the relationship actually lasted. So yeah, because we were together, I think it was like 6 months, and then it was much longer than that I was still journaling about it. So yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I did not realize
and
that.
As I'm like reading those journal entries, it's so funny. It felt like, like you watch a scary movie and you see the chick and she's about to walk down the creepy stairs into like the weird basement. You're like, don't go, don't do it. Please don't do it. And I'm like reading these entries. I'm like, like just walk away. Don't do it. Don't do it. Like just end it now. As I'm like, the first entry is like, oh, there's this person. I'm like, walk away. But obviously you can't change the past.
So would you say there was any red flags that you noticed that whenever you were rereading your journal, you were able to see, oh my goodness, this actually was bad from the start, or this started off not bad, but then things did go south? And I don't mean bad morally. I just mean with hopes of a romantic relationship that did occur. And then
there were definitely red flags as I was reading, because and I want to just take a moment to describe the place I was in life, because I think that gives a little insight into why I was with this person, I guess. So by God's grace, thankfully, I was in the Word consistently, and I was constantly talking to the Lord, and like my prayers and my journal are evidence of that. So it wasn't that I had broken communication with the Lord, but it was, I had really low self-esteem. I really couldn't see my value or my worth. And I felt like, and I wouldn't have said this at the time, but like, I felt like I didn't deserve a really great guy. Like whatever I got was going to be good enough. And I had already pre-purposed in my mind that I was going to be the one to fight for that relationship. I was going to be the one to pour into it and make it work. And I was willing to put in the hard work.
That's interesting. Before you even met whoever you were going to be dating? Because you dated them. You didn't court them.
Definitely. I did not court. And I went on several dates with guys, and it was just like, okay, well, if this is the quality of men that are my options, I'm really going to have to put the legwork in. And I think that's just part of my personality in other areas. Like I'm not naturally a genius. I have to put the work in, and I'm always willing to do that to achieve whatever goal or desire I have. So I just assume that would work with relationships. Like I desire a relationship. This is the quality of guy. I have to really put the work in, and I'm willing to do that. Which not smart. That's not how relationships work. Unfortunately, that's not the way God's designed relationships to work.
Okay. I kind of want you to unpack and explain that a little bit, but also I really want to hear, I know you were setting up a little bit to tell a story of how this relationship that you had, how it began, how it moved along, and then how it ended. So could you maybe just give a little taste of how come relationships aren't meant to work and function in a way that is one person doing the majority of the building of it? And then let's jump into your story.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I had to learn the hard way why relationships don't work that way. And I think I'll answer that question as I kind of delve into my experience with this guy. So I'll answer that in a minute, but I do want to just address like where I was self-worth wise. I was like just an indicator of like how low my self-esteem was. Like I wasn't eating regularly, and like knowing what I know about nutrition now, like I just was trying to look a certain way to attract anybody. And I was willing to do that at the expense of what was best for me. And like that mentality would go not just with eating habits, but like, a red flag in the relationship was like, I would be the one providing for us. Like I would buy stuff for us and I would, fill the gap in all the time. And I was just like so starved for affection that even like the smallest amount of, service that he gave me would cover up a multitude of the times he wasn't there for me. So I wasn't looking at things logically. And the way that I met this person, we met through mutual friends, and I definitely was the one. I was the low hanging fruit. I made it way too easy for him to pursue me. And like,
Okay. How so?
I was the one always texting him. I was, the one that, I don't know, like I just put myself out there and I made it really easy.
Okay.
Yeah. And
would you say you pursued him more than he pursued you?
yes, definitely.
Okay.
Like to the point to where he would say things that just were like from the beginning, it was not going to work out. And I just didn't see that. And one of the biggest red flags that like covers the entirety of that relationship is that I wasn't judging him based off who he was. I was judging him based off his potential the entire time. So like for example, he was a really smart guy, but extremely lazy. And he was on academic probation. And that just drove me crazy because I was just like, I don't understand. Like, you are smart. You could totally ace this test or this class. And the excuse is just like, oh, I forgot, or, oh, I slept in, or, whatever. And so I just was like, okay, well, he's capable of more. And I'm fine with that, even though he's not doing more. And it wasn't even like I thought I could change him, which, ladies, you cannot change the guy. I'm telling you, you can't do it. But it wasn't that I thought I could change him. I think it was more so just like, okay, Lord, like you've allowed this relationship to happen. So I'm just going to trust you to change him. And that wasn't.
Okay. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Like my prayer, like reading my journals, like just constantly like bringing to the Lord, like, Lord, I see this, please change this. Like I was just constantly praying for this man. This guy, I don't even know if I call him a man at the time. He's a man now, but
which I think that's good. I think it's good to bring your requests to the Lord, but I do find it interesting that you're like, oh God, you made this relationship happen. So I really need you to fix these things. Cause, I'm kind of curious. Would you say that as you were in this relationship that it was, one that God would have sanctioned? Do you think it was one that God would have said, yes, this is good. And I'm allowing this for, I mean, obviously it was used for your good, but would you say the relationship in and of itself was one that was founded on like righteousness, or one that was founded on more so, like you mentioned at the beginning, a desire to run from kind of your insecurities, or to have an outlet for just spending time with someone, or being able to enjoy things that people in relationships enjoy, like time alone and things like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say it's probably a mixed bag. Like I had some desires in that relationship that were good. But I also was motivated out of a fear of being alone. Like I said, for whatever reason, I thought I need to find the guy in college. Otherwise, my chances are going to be really low. And I just had such a lack of faith in God's ability to provide or even his desire to give good gifts. Like I just was like, okay, God, like this is what you got for me. So I'm just going to put my big girl face on. And there were just so many times that I would like come to the Lord and be like, Lord, I'm so sorry that I'm not thankful for him, but I am so hurt in this way. Or, Lord, please forgive me for not being content, and maybe this is wrong of me, but I feel like it hurts my feelings immensely when he tells me, I know I need to prioritize you. Like that was something he always told me, like, I know I need to prioritize you, but he never did. And so the Lord used all those experiences for my good. And I think because I was, despite the faults with the relationship, I really genuinely wanted the Lord first in my life. And the minute I understood the Lord was saying, this is not for you, was the same minute I ended that relationship. So I don't know, like it has a mixed bag. Like I genuinely was blind to, like, I did not see all these problems in the relationship while I was in the relationship. Like I didn't see this till months after the fact, and friends coming to me that I had friends when I was with this guy who came to me or just flat out told me like, I don't like him. And I was like, like really hurt by that. And just like, okay. And then, and also we never talk anymore. Like my friends are like coming to me and I'm just like, all right, well, when we're together, we just won't talk about him and that will fix the problem.
You're like, well, that's really hard.
Well, yeah. Well, I was the one who was like, we just won't talk about him. There you go. Problem solved.
Oh, that was you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Which is so strange to me. I don't know. Looking back, I'm like, why did you do that? But yeah, so that was a red flag. I wasn't willing to listen to what my friends actually thought about him. And just, people telling.
What about your parents? Did they say anything about him that was positive or negative? Or were they kind of out of the loop?
They were kind of out of the loop, although I did talk to them regularly about him. And
okay. But they only heard your versions of him kind of. So it was with rose-colored glasses a little bit.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know about boundaries. Like, what do I do? Like, it was just like my first relationship. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what should I do? And I think my parents handled it really well. I'm really grateful for their support throughout it, because one of the red flags, we're just going on the red flag train, was that he really was not interested in meeting my family or being a part of my family. And again, so I would see that and I was like, Lord, please change his heart. Like, whoever I'm with needs to be a part of my family. And if this is the guy, then I know you'll fix that. And so, that was my logic the whole time. And so he really drug his feet. Like I basically had to twist his arm to come home with me one time. The one time he met my family, and they were just unimpressed, and I could tell. And I was just like, and I wasn't interested in what they had to say. And I think that they were incredibly wise and incredibly patient with me. And I know that they just went before the Lord on my behalf. And basically, we're like, we see this, and this. She's not going to listen to us, because I was so hard of heart and I wouldn't have listened. And they just continued to ask me questions about it. And like those questions were starting to break the way that I saw this person. And one of those questions that really was like the beginning breaking point, because like it was like a cycle. So it would be like, I'd come before the Lord. He hurt me this way and this way. Please fix this. Please give me contentness. And it would just be like, like I said earlier, that one sweet thing that he did that would cover the multitude. And like looking back, the only thing that tethered us together was my attraction for him. Like I'd be like, yes, there's this and this problem, but the way he looked at me, and I just like really focus.
That's really interesting. Okay.
Oh yeah. Like I just really focus on that emotional experience, and I would heighten the emotional quote unquote truth that I thought was present to cover all the logical issues that I was seeing. And that worked for a while. So I just really want to caution our listeners with that ability. Like, you can seriously blind yourself to some big issues if you just choose to focus on the way he makes you feel. Because that's exactly what I did. And one of those instances was, and this happened a couple times where, I mean, he just straight up stood me up. Like, we had plans to meet and he didn't show up. He didn't address it afterwards. He never apologized. He just like acted like it never happened. And then I just waited for hours for this guy that he is my boyfriend. And I remember telling my dad about it. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it happened, but I'm probably overreacting. And my dad was just like, he's like, oh, like, do you think you're worth so little? Like, are you just okay with that? And I was just like, oh, well, you put it that way. I don't know. And so it just kind of started.
Yeah. Praise God, your dad pointed that out to you.
Yeah. And he was just like, you need to talk to him about this. And I'm like, you think so? And he's like, definitely. And I'm like, okay, you know? And so, yeah, there were a lot of red flags.
And then you said you eventually are the one who kind of ended the relationship. So what caused that to happen? What was it? Just a straw that broke the camel's back? Was it you finally listening to the people around you? Was it you what was the thing that caused the relationship to end?
Yeah. So it was definitely it was to the point in our relationship. I remember thinking to myself, okay, I really don't like the way that this is going. I'm going to give it, I think I gave it 2 months. I was like, if things have not changed in 2 months from now, and I never told him this, I was like, if things haven't changed in 2 months from now, I'm going to end it because I can't keep doing this cycle. It's just miserable. And
the cycle of what?
Just being hurt. He does that one sweet thing. And then and the sweet things he were doing, genuinely looking back in hindsight, weren't even that sweet. It was he got me flowers and it was just like, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. Right. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so.
Okay, but that was a really big deal.
Yeah. And so I was just like, look at the flowers. He took time to think about me and got me these flowers. And just rewriting what had actually happened. Another red flag I didn't want to miss is that our relationship there was nobody else present for it. We were always alone together. And when we were alone together, it was very different than when we were with other people, which was
okay.
a huge red flag. When I was with his friends, I felt extremely uncomfortable. Just looking at him who even are you right now? I thought I knew you. The way you're acting is just really immature and just really, just jokes that weren't clean. And I don't know. I just didn't like it. And it was even his friends were kind of looking at me what are you doing with him? Yeah. One of them basically asked me that. And I was just I don't know. I was I don't know. Maybe I have miscalculated the situation. And it was just really strange. And we couldn't hang out with my friends because they didn't like him. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's embarrassing looking back now, but
I think it's very telling. And one of the reasons it's so important, I think, to interact with someone of the opposite sex, for a girl to interact with a guy around his friends and around his family, is because that's an example of who they are most of the time. They can put up a good front and clean themselves up whenever they're with you one-on-one or whenever they're with you one-on-two, maybe. But if they're interacting with people that are long-standing friends of theirs or that have known them for a while, whether it be a friend or a family member or even an acquaintance or someone who's older than them and a pastor or a mentor, they really can't fool you as well, because by fooling you, they'd have to fool them. And those people can call them out and go, well, you're acting kind of weird, or make a comment about it. And then I think what is more common than not is if you have a guy, and we'll just say in his normal setting, he'll act the way he normally does, even if you have that special girl there. And I think that there's certain things they'll do to clean up their act, but it's a lot harder for them to not be themselves if there are people around them that are expecting them to be themselves. So yeah, I would say the idea of you guys being alone and not having people on either side who could kind of be the bumper rails for you and keep you not only guided to do things that are good, but also guided to help you see who the other person is that's in front of you.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I wish that I had listened to my friend more carefully. One of the other big issues that I had with the relationship all along was that I definitely was the one leading us spiritually. Like I was the one like, hey, we should read through Proverbs together. Or I was the one always asking those questions and trying to understand his thoughts. And his answers were really just shallow. And I mean, some of them flat out surprised me. Like I was just like, Lord, I think he's just saying the right answer, but I don't think he has a fear of you. Like, I don't think he values children. I don't, and there was all these things I'm like, and again, I was just like, please change him, Lord, please change him. And,
yeah. So whenever you describe your relationship with this young man, it just makes me think that you really were dating a boy. I mean, even though he in a man's body. And I'm also curious if you think he was a believer.
I think he was a believer, like nominally. Like I think he is your typical quote unquote Christian. Like I think he is the average. That's what I would say. He knew the right things to say, but there was like no passion there. There was no fear there. There was no excitement there. Like for me, it was just like, and I just thought, well, if I show him my passion and my excitement, like maybe he'll catch on. And it was just really strange. So like one of the things that really hurt my feelings, and I don't think the relationship ever recovered from this was, well, it didn't, obviously we broke up, but, was that so during college, I am not proud to say, but I really didn't go to church. And there's a multitude of reasons for that. I had to work on Sundays was one of them, but that's an excuse that I don't think is quite right. Doesn't cover that. But I had every other Sunday off, and I knew that he went to church. He went to church because he was the sound person at a church. And I was just like, hey, like, can I join you? And he was like, ooh, I don't know. And I'm like, you don't know if I can join you for church? He's like, you can go, but you can't go with me. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, I'm part of the sound team and you'd be distracting. I was like, dude, there's 2 seats up there. I know for a fact that couples sit up there all the time. And he's like, yeah, well, best not. So I went and I sat by myself. Like, I was just like so hurtful to me. It was so hurtful. I don't know. And it's funny now because I'm just like, my husband is on the sound team for our church now. And I sit with him with our baby all the time. Like, it's fine.
You're like, I will join this person.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just showed me like, he's not willing to be uncomfortable to be with me ever. And he's not willing to be uncomfortable to meet my family. He's not willing to be uncomfortable to make a good impression on my friends. Like he just really isn't willing to pursue me. Cause part of like pursuing a person is you just don't care how comfortable you are as long as you're with that person. Like it's fine. I'm willing to put myself out there because of the person. And that just wasn't present. And so I remember,
Yeah. I think that makes sense. And I feel like that's a part of a responsibility of what the young men have. And I know it can't be easy, but they really do have a duty on their shoulders to be uncomfortable for the sake of the girl that they want to be with. And also in an effort of allowing her to be I mean, she'll be uncomfortable too in some things, but also to allow her to be more comfortable than he is. Like, he shouldn't be doing things at her expense. He should be doing things at his expense.
Yeah. And so the relationship really came to a head when Christmas break rolled around. And so his family was taking a trip to California and they invited me to come. And my parents said I could go, which is surprising looking back. But I'm glad I went, but it was, I don't know that I would I don't know. It was an experience. And so I went.
Yeah.
Through that trip, I learned two things about this guy. And one of those things was and I knew this all along, his mom had passed away and he didn't know who his father was. So his grandparents and his uncle largely raised him. And he did not get along with his sister at all. So the relationship he had with all the women in his family was pretty strained. I didn't like the way he treated, like, he didn't treat his grandma poorly, but also he didn't treat her really well either. So it's like kind of this neutral ground that I was like, not really. That's kind of weird. And he was straight up hostile to his sister. So it's just like, that made me concerned. And then also realizing that his only father figure that he had was his uncle, and his uncle was living in sexual sin with another man. And so that, I'm not saying that the person that you're with has to come from an ideal family. Like, the Lord could have taken this man and he could have grown out of it and be like, I hate this sin. It's disgusting. I don't like what it's done in this way and this way. And he could love the Lord all the more for it. So I'm not saying that on itself is the breaking point. But for me, looking at that dynamic, I was just like, if I had kids with this person, would I trust my kids with that guy? That was hard
with his family.
Yeah, that was hard for me. And I was just like, I don't know. Like, and the uncle was super nice. Like, he was like, of all the family members, treated me really well. He really liked me. I enjoyed my time with him. But it was just,
the idea of there's this culture of sin that's approved of in this family that you don't want to be a part of your own future family.
Yeah.
Or that bothers you.
Yeah. And when I would talk to my boyfriend at the time about that, it was a huge blind spot. And that really concerned me. And like, the tactic that he used in that conversation was very manipulative to make me see it a certain way. And it was just like, yeah, but this is what God's word says. And for me, it just didn't work. I'm like, this is what God's word says. Like, you can't change that. So it really bothered me that he was willing to change aspects of God's word that didn't fit with what he liked or didn't like.
No, yeah, that would definitely be another red flag. So after going on that trip and then coming home for Christmas, that's whenever you broke up with him, right?
Yes, that's when I broke up with him. And it was just, it was a point to where we had been having issues throughout the trip. Like, he had said things that were really hurtful to me and all those things, but I didn't have a chance to go journal and pray to God. And like, I was with him the whole time. So that was like a huge issue.
Like, get away and process it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I remember we got home and my parents happened to be in our college town, like vacationing, because it's like Christmas time. And I was like, hey, would you be willing to come with me and talk to my parents about some of the things we've learned in this relationship? Like, because in my mind, I'm like, this is like your last chance, bud, to like show me that you're willing to be uncomfortable on my behalf and talk to my parents. And he was like, no, I'm good. And I'm like, okay. And so I went and talked to my parents, and I'm really glad that I did. And I just unburdened all the things that were happening, and I was willing to listen to them fully. And they just told me, you know, like, this is really hurtful and this is hard, but like, I don't think that this is the guy for you, especially just looking at your guys's like goals in life logically, like they don't even align. And I was like, yeah. And they're like on top of some of the theological issues. And I'm like, yeah. So it was hard. And really up to this point, all these red flags that I've described to you, Abby, I didn't see them. Like genuinely still thought he was probably the best guy I would ever find. And so me going to the Lord with that feeling and just being like, okay, God, I know that you can make this relationship work. I know that if you willed for it, it could. Like, I know you can make this happen. You can make anything happen. And I am begging you, God, please make this work. And it was just really clear. No, I will not make this work. And furthermore, it's now at a point like, if you don't break up with him, you're being disobedient. So I was like,
wow, yeah,
okay. Like that was enough for me. And so I, called him up, told him this isn't going to work. And it was such an interesting exchange because one, I think he was shocked, which I was dumbfounded that he could be surprised. But two,
you're like, you didn't see this coming?
I know. Okay, it's fine. I was like, but two, he was just like, well, you love me and I love you. We can make anything work. And it was in that moment that I was like, you know what? I think that you need more than just love to make a relationship work. Like the way that God's designed it, it's not enough.
Praise God, they showed you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was really hard. And the thing is like looking back, I definitely would say that I loved him. And I definitely did to the...
You would or you wouldn't?
In the time, I'd say like I definitely loved him to the best way that I knew how. But I don't think he loved me. And so it was like very one-sided. Like I said at the beginning, like I was putting my all into this. I was trying to make it work to the best of my ability. And relationships don't work one-sided, just coming back full around. Because when that happens, eventually that person, gets burnt out. Like it just...
No, it's hard.
Yeah. Especially
it's hard to be the one who's the only one sustaining something, regardless of what it is.
Right. And not only was I the only one sustaining that relationship, but like Christ wasn't the one in the middle of it. Like it wasn't like with my marriage now where I look to Christ, my husband looks to Christ. And because we're both looking to Christ, it's beautiful and it's working and there's grace to fill the gap. It was like, I'm looking to Christ and this guy's looking over. I don't know what he's looking at. And Christ is like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, so it didn't work out.
No, that makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was the aftermath of that breakup like for you?
It was,
because I feel like that's kind of the culmination of what we're trying to get at of heartbreak.
Right.
So after the fact, what was it like for you as you were the one who called off the relationship, but obviously you said that there was a lot of time spent reeling and recovering from the relationship itself.
Oh, it was horrible. It was awful. Yeah, I think so. My parents, like I said, were staying in the town and I just literally cried in the bathtub for days. Like it was just horrible. Just cried and cried. And it made my sisters really uncomfortable. And I was just like, don't let this happen to you. Like, learn from my mistakes.
Use me as an example.
I was like, I pray to God, you never know what this feels like.
No, that's so true, though. That makes total sense. I'm glad you were at least in your pain thinking about that for them. You're like, this sucks for me, but let me be an example.
It was horrible.
A terrible example.
Yeah, and I think I just I don't even know. Like, I think, you see in the rom-com movies, the girl goes through heartbreak and she's like eating the ice cream and she's like listening to songs on repeat. And like, truly that was my only example for heartbreak. So that's what I did.
Oh, wow.
Like I can tell you I was an unhealthy weight when I broke things off them and I gained a lot of weight very quickly. I don't know. Like, it was just like,
you tried to medicate the pain through something other than the truths of scripture, such as like, I mean, in Romans 8, it talks about how the Lord works all things together for the good of those who love him. So just little nuggets of truth like that you weren't meditating on. You were more so just like, man, this hurts. This is painful. I'm mourning and I need to cope in some way.
Yeah. And it was just this, I don't know, like self-indulgent time. Like I just wasn't very disciplined in a lot of ways, which I think caused me to like, because when you go through heartbreak, you're already struggling with the question of like, who am I? What is my identity? And when you then let go of all the disciplines that you have worked so hard to maintain, that question can feel even harder to answer. Yeah. It was just, I don't know. I just felt numb inside. Like, it's just like, it truly is like an emotional experience. Like, it's just this roller coaster of like, hey, I think I've cried every tear I could possibly cry. And then it's like, you see a puppy and then you're like, oh, just kidding. I got more. And just, it's like so weird. So
there's this element of extreme mourning to it. But how do you think you can be in a state of a broken heart and mourn well? I know there's not like a set list of rules of, oh, you can cry exactly 79 and a half tears. But I know that there has to be a way where we can experience any type of hurt well. And I think that those principles from scripture of how to just go through times of mourning, they can be applied also to heartbreak, because that's also a time of mourning.
Yeah. I think the biggest question you can ask yourself is, who are you turning to? Are you completely isolated? Are you totally turning to yourself? There's times I did that. And those are the times that were the hardest. Are you turning to media and television to tell you how you should be feeling and thinking? I did that, and that was miserable. Are you turning to your friends? Like, are you turning to God's word? Are you like those? I don't know. So when I started turning to those things, I would say like I started experiencing some sort of like healing and growth, but I'll probably delve more into that side of my experience in the next episode. But initially when things got broken off, I was very, like I said, undisciplined, miserable. Gabe calls it my sad girl hours. I had my like sad girl playlist, and I just would walk in the dark and just cry. It was horrible.
In the sidewalks of school.
And just be like, I'm fine.
Yeah, I remember you doing those.
Well, yeah, because when we met, I was still like, so.
Yeah, and actually, I think that, I don't know, we met one another whenever both of us were kind of going through rough things relationally. And one thing that the Lord has shown me is that he used those instances for myself, as well as what I was going through, as well as what you were going through, to draw us to him and to one another. And one thing that I remember one thing that I remembered and told myself whenever I was looking back at those times is, I lost so-and-so and I'm no longer close to this person, or Jeshua is no longer close to this guy. So Jeshua lost her boyfriend, but she was able to gain other relationships. I lost a close relationship with so-and-so, but I was able to gain this deep relationship with Jeshua. And I'm grateful for what I have. What I have is better than what I was asking for. What God gave is better than what I thought I could ever get. And that is something that encourages me in the midst of loss. And I think could encourage others as they are looking at things and going, wow, this did not turn out how I hoped it would. This is kind of a flop. And I'm frustrated now. And I encourage you to remember that the Lord will give you more than you could ask, think, or imagine, and not less. And that he plans good for those who love him. And if you are one of his children, then he has good planned for you.
Yeah.
So dwell on those things.
Yeah, I think that's probably a great note to end this episode. Next week, I would love to just talk about how you turn that mourning into joy, and continuing on the journey of at least my experience, trusting the Lord with my future spouse. So with that, ladies, do not grow weary of doing good.
For we know in God's timing, we will reap a harvest of good reward if we do not give up.